So why did our ancient ancestors choose to walk upright? The forests were retreating, but out on the savannah, they were easy prey. But walking meant they could travel further to find food, and it freed up their hands. Walking on two legs clearly has advantages, but it comes at a price, and it's one we are still paying today.
Well, over here we have Professor Karen Rosenberg from the University of Delaware, and she's been studying this part of Lucy's anatomy very carefully. So this is a modern human pelvis, and it's a completely different shape from the chimpanzee.
Completely different. And it's completely different because of the way that we walk. As bipeds, we've had to modify our pelvis completely in order to walk on two legs, which a chimpanzee doesn't do.
I mean, this is like a blade. I mean, in fact, we do call this the iliac blade,
Yes,
don't we?
exactly.
And in us, it's formed a kind of basin shape.
Right.
It's a completely different shape.
Completely different. And the birth canal is completely different as well. In humans, the birth canal, which is here, is wide at the top.
Yeah.
And then long at the midplane in the middle, and then approximately round at the outlet. And chimpanzees are long in all dimensions, so it's quite a different shape.
So do chimpanzees have any problems giving birth?
Apparently not. Apparently they have a pretty easy time. The baby's head is much smaller than the birth canal, and it seems to go through in a pretty straightforward way without a lot of difficulty.
So do you think that the changes to the human pelvis that have come about because of this adaptation to walking on two legs have had a knock-on effect for childbirth?
Huge effect for childbirth, and not just the modifications for locomotion, but it's because we give birth to babies with large brains.
Yeah, that's a bad bit of design, isn't it?
It is a very bad design.
Okay, so babies with big brains would have come along a bit later,
Yes, much later.
After Lucy's kind. But over here, we've got reconstructed Lucy's pelvis, because I think it's very useful to be able to see the pelvis in the round with the sacrum at the back as well. Now, first of all, it's very, very tiny, but I think if I put it in the middle there, I mean, I think that looks much more like a modern human pelvis than it does like a chimpanzee. In fact, it looks almost nothing like a chimpanzee pelvis.
Absolutely. The modifications that happened because we walk on two legs had taken place, obviously, by the time of Lucy. And so the pelvis looks much more similar to a modern human. But it doesn't look exactly like a modern human. And that's because the birth canal didn't have to give birth to a large brain baby.
So do you think Lucy would have still been able to give birth relatively easily then?
Relatively easily, but differently than in a chimpanzee.
So how have you been able to work that out?
Well,
and how differently?
Well, quite differently. So if we look at the way that modern humans give birth.
So this is a newborn baby,
this is
by the way.
a model of a newborn baby. In modern humans, the fit between the baby's head and the baby's shoulders and the birth canal is quite tight, as lots of people know from personal experience.
Yes, I know it from my personal experience.
So the baby's head typically enters the birth canal facing to the side, like this.
Yeah.
But then it usually gets stuck, and so it usually turns, rotates 90 degrees, and emerges like this, so that the back of the baby's head is facing to the front of the mother's body. So the mother can't easily reach down and clear the baby's breathing passage or move the umbilical cord if it's around the neck. Those are things that in other animals the mother can do for herself, but it's more difficult for humans to do. So humans are typically, almost always, born with another person helping.
So with Lucy's pelvis then, why do you think it would have been difficult to get a baby out through Lucy's pelvis? Because her babies would have had much smaller heads than ours.
Yes, but Lucy's pelvis, and Lucy's birth canal in particular, is different from both modern humans and a chimpanzee. It's like a modern human in that it's wide from side to side, but then it has that shape all the way through.
So her baby wouldn't have twisted around in the same way?
Exactly, and not only didn't need to turn and twist, it probably couldn't turn and twist.
So this is really interesting. It means that in order to stand and walk upright on two legs, Lucy was paying a price. She was paying a price in that it made childbirth more difficult.
Absolutely.
Hey guys, Mark Seaside here from Sea Science Film Labs. I just wanted to discuss this topic today. We had Professor Alice Roberts of the BBC and Professor Karen Rosenberg, Delaware University, discussing Lucy's pelvis and how human it appears, even modern human, which is surprising, and that the only difference is some slight angles of the ilium and the iliac blade. And to me, that's hilarious because the ilium is complete reconstruction. So any strange angles could be attributed to the fact that it's a reconstruction. But let's see. Let's take a look at this. We'll break it down real quick. We'll discuss Lucy's very modern human-appearing pelvic anatomy and what this could possibly mean, beyond the common narrative that this is some transitional form.
I mean, I think that looks much more like a modern human pelvis than it does like a chimpanzee. In fact, it looks almost nothing like a chimpanzee pelvis.
Yeah, it really does look nothing like a chimpanzee pelvis, which in a transitional form, you might expect that they'd be between human and what would be a tree-dwelling ape's pelvis. But that's not what you see in Lucy. In fact, it's our opinion here that Lucy is composed of human and chimp parts, that the bottom parts of Lucy do not match the top. They don't connect anywhere. You know, they weren't found articulated. It seems that the top portions of Lucy are actually smaller than the bottom parts, even though the bottom parts are relatively small for a modern human. So what's interesting is how human these pelvis bones appear, while how chimpanzee the top portions of Lucy's body appears, like the arms and the ribs. Considering this triangular bone here, the sacrum, fully fused sacrum, you can see that the holes of the sacrum foramen, they are in the same position and the same orientation as a modern human sacrum, okay? They're not in between in positions. The angles of these holes are the same angles between Lucy's sacrum and a human sacrum. The Lucy sacrum has the same curvature, size, and shape of a modern human sacrum. It's my opinion that this is a human sacrum because it's indifferent from a human sacrum. Now, it's interesting that in a recent video release, Johansen admitted that the knee joint that they found before the Lucy discovery was supposed to be of an Australopithecus afarensis, was indifferent from a modern human knee joint.
Here is the knee joint I found, and it's identical. This is the bottom end of the thigh bone, and this is the top end of the shin bone. And this is identical to the knees that an orthopedic surgeon puts in as a transplant. And one of the first people I showed this to was an orthopedic surgeon. And he looked at it and he says, well, it's identical to a modern human knee.
The pelvis remains of Lucy appear human. This knee joint that Johansen found that it is attributed to an afarensis appears identical to a modern human knee joint. If that's the case, then it's our opinion that these remains are misidentified, whether intentionally or not, as afarensis remains when they should be being attributed to humankind. With the recent discovery of the baboon remain in the Lucy fossil box, is it possible that other contaminants were put in there as well? Is it possible that human remains were placed in the Lucy fossil box? That the only bipedal parts in the Lucy fossil box actually belonged to humans? Small humans, but they were humans. I think so. Shouldn't the fact that it took over 30 years to identify the obvious baboon remain, and arguably the most famous supposed transitional form between tree-dwelling apes and humankind, make a thinking person skeptical of this field of research? Men actually died believing that this conglomeration was of a single individual before a monkey remain was identified in it. It doesn't seem like careful analysis of these supposed human ancestors is being done if it took that long to identify a monkey remain. Maybe those involved don't want to know.
I mean, I think that looks much more like a modern human pelvis than it does like a chimpanzee. In fact, it looks almost nothing like a chimpanzee pelvis.